several Mexican attacks. Regrouping, Santa Anna's soldiers scaled the walls and rushed into the compound. The desperate struggle continued until the defenders were overwhelmed. By sunrise, the battle had ended and the garrison was slain. You know, historians may debate some of the details regarding the Battle of the Alamo, but none of them question the incredible sacrifice that was made and the courage that was displayed during that intense conflict. They made the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives. And this is why the story of the Alamo is so inspiring and so encouraging. You know, and that's why the Bible is so inspiring, friends, because someone was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice and give his life so that you can have freedom and eternal life. Don't you think you could trust your life to a friend?
That calls me from a world of cares and bids me at my Father's throne, make all my wants and wishes known. In seasons of distress and grief, my soul has often found relief and oft escaped the tempter's snare by thy return, sweet hour of prayer. Gua yoye kunamata nahi yota komorewa inohotipa kukumbira kunababa vekutenga kumnandiu kukulea ingatingi ngatu tuza nizengibo nei kaya.
Good morning and welcome to Defining Your Health Talk Show. I'm your host, Ina Morales. This morning we have a very important guest with us. He's a medical doctor and he's going to be sharing his experience of fighting COVID-19 on the front line. Our guest this morning is Dr. Javier Canul, who comes all the way from La Isla Bonita, San Pedro. Dr. Javier is the eldest of 5 siblings. He first started his educational journey at Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Primary School, followed by Canaan SDA High School. Later went on to the University of Belize. Dr. Canul got his medical degree from La Escuela Latinoamericana de Medicina ILAM in La Habana, Cuba. Since then, he He has served in several capacities. Between 2014 and 2015, he interned at Carthushina Memorial Hospital and then went on to be a medical officer for Belize Hospice and Palliative Care Foundation. Currently, he serves as the medical officer for Dr. Otto Rodriguez Polyclinic and holds the post as surveillance focal point for San Pedro while heading the response against COVID-19 for the Ministry of Health. Apart from bearing the responsibilities of such big shoes, he is a father of a brilliant 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old, Tirza, and is the fiancé to the beautiful Tanisha Benjamin. Good morning, Dr. Javier. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, so COVID-19. I first heard about COVID-19 back in March, but I'm sure it was around long before then, especially in several other countries. Tell us about the first time you heard that COVID-19 was coming to Belize, and how did you feel knowing that you were a doctor on the front line?
Well, when I first heard that COVID-19 was in China and then spreading to other parts of the world, I knew it was just an eventuality of it coming to Belize. As doctors, our jobs are high risk. On a daily basis, we face threats to our personal health. There's HIV, there's tuberculosis, there's so many other things that we're exposed on a daily basis. And so my response to that was, well, I need to prepare myself as best as possible. I need to know what are the safety measures that I need to take to ensure my health as well as the health of my family, my friends, and those around me. I also worried about, or I also started to do research on best management. And since it's something that was new, there was so many papers to read, so much information to go through. But as part of my diligence, I had to prepare myself both emotionally, mentally, as well as physically.
I know the first time when COVID came in March, it was at San Pedro, and I know you are one of the doctors in San Pedro who had to deal with that situation. I heard, we have a tendency to say the first wave was in March, but I've heard Dr. Manzanero said that what we are in right now with the increase in cases, that is what we would have, term as the first wave. What we had in March was not a first wave. How does your first experience back in March differ from the state in which San Pedro is currently in?
Well, it's interesting, Diana, because in March, the first 2 cases, I was actually attending doctor that swabbed and attending to these patients until they had recovered. So it was a scary experience in the sense that there was so much that was not known at the time. But thankfully, I was able to attend to these patients without getting sick myself. Your question is, how does it differ from now? I think now we have a lot more knowledge of this entire disease. And I think that now we're a bit more prepared. Gratefully, like you rightly said, it wasn't really a wave, it was just 2 isolated cases. And so that gave us more time to prepare the staff, to educate ourselves a bit more. And so it differs now. Yes, we have more cases, but we're a bit more prepared. We had more time to educate the community, to make everybody know, well, you know what, these are the things you need to do. And so I believe that, yes, we have more cases now, but we had a chance to prepare. It didn't just come 250 cases right away. We had 2 cases and we were able to sensitize the community and get certain things in place when it comes to our safety protocols and how we manage these cases. In fact, in San Pedro, we were able to even start a separate clinic just for flu cases. So all that was possible thanks to that we didn't have that large amount of cases and we actually had a chance to prep.
Well said. As you're talking, I heard you said that you had time to prep, and you were one of the doctors who had to deal with the first 2 cases. What are some of the things that you have had to witness as being the doctor at the front line, what are some of the measures that you personally had to take daily while caring for patients in order to protect yourself from being infected?
That's a very good question. I think the first measure we have to take is educating ourselves. I had to educate myself on the proper use of PPEs, the proper care, donning, doffing, putting on our protective equipment. Whenever we attend to these patients, we have to wear our PPE, which stands for personal protective equipment. We have to use our N95 masks, which are specialized masks. We have to use our face shield, the entire suit. Looking like a spaceman. Sorry. Um, that's very important. I think the first step was educating ourselves as to how to properly use our protective equipment. And then whenever I went, I took along an assistant. We went to the person's house. We put on the clothes with or the equipment with diligence, and we took it off with diligence. Went straight home, took a shower, took off the clothes outside, left the shoes outside, took a shower, and then get back to work. So that's the way I prepared myself for that. Um, I think a huge component to this COVID disease is the mental health issue, which is often ignored. A lot of these people, they might feel as if they have shortness of breath, but it's actually just anxiety. So, yes, we've seen people that are severely ill, and we had to refer them to HMH, which is tertiary hospital. But I think that for the most part, most people that are on San Pedro and have COVID, I think their mental health is great by COVID.
Okay. Fortunately, some of the, how we would say, some of us as Belizeans are taking this virus very seriously, while you have others that are not. They're a bit more relaxed when it comes to the safety measures, such as wearing the mask, washing your hand properly, using the hand sanitizer if you cannot wash your hand, and practicing that social distancing. We want to be prepared. We want to avoid being infected, but also we don't want to go so overboard that it start affecting our mental health. I remember hearing on the talk show on Love FM, there was this expert who was talking about the importance of balancing your fears when it comes to COVID-19, because some people, yes, they're taking the necessary precautions, but others are freaking out, they're panicking, and that's a no-no too, because then it will bring about other physical symptoms. And at this time, the person who was there, she mentioned that we want our immune system to be at its optimum best. And if you're stressed, if you're always worrying, having anxiety about all the different things, then your body is going to be in a state of stress. So can you share with our viewers the importance of balancing their response to the COVID-19 and how best they can stay protected?
I think balance is very, very key. I agree with you that we must do certain things. We must wash our hands, use our masks, social distance, etc. These are very important to decrease the transmission of the virus from person to person. But like you rightly said, there are people that take it to another extreme. There are people that sit and watch the TV all day or search the internet all day, COVID, COVID, COVID all day. In today's world, there is a overload of information, and so it's important to know where you're getting your information from, as well as to know when to get enough. If you sit and watch about how many thousands died today in US, then you want to look how many thousands died in maybe China or wherever else, it will become very stressful. And like you rightly said, that could affect your mental health. And as you know, the mind governs the body, and if the mind is stressed, that decreases your immune system. You can't sleep, you feel ill, So I think it's very important to maybe just find one trustworthy source of information, maybe get a daily update, but it doesn't make sense to be just sitting and watching COVID all day. I know we are not limited. We're limited when it comes to going outside and other things, but you could do other activities. COVID isn't all there is to life. take precautions when going outside, but you have so much other things that you could focus your attention on. And having a good mental space, having a good mental status affects your health directly. So it's important not to overdo it when it comes to worrying, because worrying doesn't accomplish anything. Um, the song says, "Don't worry when you can pray," right? Or why worry when you can pray? So there are other things that you can do instead of just worrying and just getting that overload of information.
You said that, Dr. Canul. I remember back in March when it had just come out, I remember one night I was there and when it was flooding Italy and China and so many people were dying, you start seeing all these video and notification on Facebook, and I was like, I felt like it was like the end of the world. Like, what do I do now? Like, I didn't even want to come out of the house. And I said, you know what? I need to stop this. I need to stop going on these social media platforms. Take a break away from Facebook or something so that at least I don't have to be thinking about these things. I know it's important and we need to practice these things, but the more, like you said, the more you flood your mind with these information on a daily basis throughout the day, then I think that's when it affects you greatly. Let's talk a little bit about the family members of patients who are affected. I remember watching a video where this nurse was crying and she was explaining how devastated it was for her as a nurse. One of her patients was dying, and normally we're used to whenever someone is sick, especially in our Belizean culture, we all go to the hospital, we visit, we take flowers, we take food, we take shifts in caring and being there. Also, you have a family member who is the one who is talking to the doctor, getting the update of how the person is progressing, what are the next steps that are going to be taken, if tests should be done, or, everything of that sort. But with the COVID-19, the whole all the situations surrounding this person's illness is different. They're the only ones that can be there, and they, as family members, we have to rely heavily on the dependability of the nurses and the doctors who are there. We have to basically entrust our loved ones with under the protection of these individuals. And she was mentioning on the video how difficult it was when she knew that this patient was going to pass away, and she wanted to give the family the wish of, saying the last goodbye. And she was like, how difficult it was, you're dying, you won't see your mom or your grandmom again, and having to say goodbye on a device, not being there to hug them, to touch them, to get that last touch from their hands. And she said, it's hard for me as a nurse. She said, I have feelings, I'm a human being, but it's hard for me to see that, this person is dying and no one is at their bedside to be there with them. How difficult, can you say, in your experience, has it been to communicate with the families of the patients who are positive, and what measures have been set in place to facilitate some type of relationship between patients and their family? Also, a follow-up question to that would be, what role do you as a doctor play in this entire process?
I think it's a very good question. I think that to answer that question, we need to realize that it's not everybody that has COVID needs hospitalization. It is said that about up to 5% of people with COVID would require ICU stay. However, we know that the grand majority are actually at home. So there is a component of those that are in the ICU where no visitors are allowed, and that's very difficult for them. I think it's important for us to be able to reach out to our loved ones, whether or not they have COVID, and not wait until they come in a position where you can't be in contact with them. Communicating someone's positive result to them can be difficult, but here in San Pedro, at least we have a system and we have a lot of media appearances. So we're educating our people 2 to 3 times a week, going on the local radio, and we're explaining to them certain things. So it's important to know that I believe it's less than 1% of people with COVID that end up dying, so that's a good news. However, if you have somebody in your home that needs or does not need medical care, there are certain measures that you need to take as a caregiver. If you're a caregiver, or if, let's say there are three people living in a house and you're fortunate enough to have one room for just that one person, it would be best to have an open window with plenty of ventilation and sunlight. It's important as well that you delegate the care of that person to just one person. You want to limit the shared space that they have. So if that person can have a bathroom by themselves, that's even better. If not, they need to sanitize after themselves and clean the surfaces after using the bathroom. The ill person needs to get a very good and balanced diet. I know in Belize we tend to eat a lot of carbohydrates, so we need a half of your plate is rice and beans, a quarter is the salad, and then the next quarter would be a chicken. But we know that we have to have a more balanced diet, more fruits, more vegetables. All those nutrients and micronutrients are very important to help to boost your immune system. If you're care of one of these people that are ill, it's important to wear a medical mask when in that same room. A medical mask is different from those cloth masks that we're making. They have multiple layers and they provide a higher level of protection. When done with the mask, you need to discard it or throw it away afterwards. You need to wash your hands as soon as you leave the room. In fact, if it's possible that you don't have to go in the room, you could just leave the food outside the door and have them pick it up and take it inside. If these persons are using utensils that are washable, they're not disposable, then you need to just give them a set of utensils just for themselves. So they have their own spoon, fork, cup, plate, etc. And whenever the person, let's say, goes to the bathroom, they need to clean down the knobs and other surfaces that they touch. It's also important that if the person starts getting more ill, that you start or you contact the health authorities so that they can receive greater or more advanced care if that's what's necessary. It's also important that the caregiver, if they start with any symptoms, that they also report that as soon as possible to the health authorities so that they can become tested and see if they need any treatment. If possible, you want your caregiver to be somebody that's under the age of 65 and preferably with no comorbidities. And comorbidities is a big word, but it just means if you have sugar, pressure, asthma, or any other underlying condition. So I think that while it's important that we know that it's a disease that's potentially fatal, it's not. That's not the case in the majority of cases, and that by taking certain safety precautions, you can care for yourself or even care for somebody that's ill. Personally, I haven't caught COVID as yet, and that's because I'm dealing with these patients almost on a daily basis. So taking proper care of yourself, doing what you need to do, goes a very long way in preventing the transmission of this disease.
We thank you, Dr. Canul. We'll take a break at this time. We'll be right back and we're going to hear more from Dr. Canul.
According to the Center for Disease Control, men die on average 5 years earlier than women. While women are expected to live an average of 81 years at birth, men are expected to live an average of 76 years, with non-Hispanic blacks having the lowest life expectancy at nearly 71 years compared to white and Hispanic males. That's a fact, but there's hope. One of the factors contributing to worse health in men is the higher prevalence of cigarette smoking among males than among females at any age. By quitting the habit, males can reduce their chances of dying from any cause and experience a longer and happier life. So don't delay, quit today.
A study published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association found that toddlers aged 12 months and older consumed a third of their daily calories from snacking between meals, with the snacks becoming less nutritious as the children got older. Dietary patterns low in fruits and veggies and high in sweets and saturated fats began to develop between the ages of 12 months and 24 months, and this pattern tended to be established by 24 months. That's a fact. But there's hope. Parents can establish the foundation for a healthy diet early in life when eating habits and preferences are being formed. Simple dietary changes, such as offering more nutritious snacks, can help prevent obesity and chronic disease in our children. So switch the gummy bear for blueberries and see them growing healthier and happier.
Abigail.
Yes, Gran?
Abigail, I can't breathe well.
Granny, we need to go to the hospital to get you checked out.
No! I'm fine.
Yes, Gran, we need to go now to get you treated. Now, before it's too late.
No.
Grandma, we need to go for all of us.
No.
Stop.
If you are having flu-like symptoms, please call us immediately for medical guidance. If you have chronic conditions such as diabetes and you are experiencing symptoms such as shortness of breath or chest pain, please also seek medical attention immediately. We've lost a lot of people this year. We don't want to lose you too. Please seek help if necessary. Call us at 0800-664-2273. Continue to wear your mask at all times. Keep physical distance when in public and stay at home unless absolutely necessary. This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to Defining Your Health Talk Show. We have our guest, Dr. Javier Canul, this morning, and he has been sharing fighting COVID-19 on the front line. Doc, let's talk a little bit about your personal experience now. How have you been personally dealing with the whole COVID-19? You know, you guys as doctors and nurses, every day you guys have to report to work, knowing that, you know, as you mentioned earlier, the risks that you take going to work every day of being infected. Emotionally, how have you been able to deal with everything that you're facing at work? Are there any protocols in place at the workplace to cater for the emotional well-being of doctors and nurses?
So I think that's a very good question. Your emotional state of being is very important here. Being fearful is not something that we want. Being worried is not something that you want, because when you're worried, when you're fearful, that's where you make the mistakes. But you are to be cautious. Personally, I have a very strong support system. I have my brother who's also a doctor. I have my friends who are nurses, my fiance. So I have a very good support system, people I can speak to, people I can take things off my chest. There is also, however, counseling services available for the healthcare workers. So have gotten ill, for example, or those who are having a hard time coping with the risks and concerns, there is a counseling service available, and we tend to communicate amongst ourselves, and that way we're able to cope. So yes, we are cautious, but we try to do things to the best of our ability. You pray when you get up in the morning, you do your best, and you basically keep a calm head about it. And then there's a support system in the event that something happened, or you want to talk about somebody or a case or something that concerns you. you have to have a support system there to be able to get things off your chest, to blow some steam off, etc.
Right. And I must commend you, Dr. Javier, because I have you on my Facebook and I see sometimes you have pictures like, you're enjoying a sunset, you're eating your favorite food, you're relaxing. And sometimes I see it and I said, wow, I don't know if I would have been able to do that, going to work every day knowing, I have to deal with COVID-19 patients and then being able to unwind and relax. And I think that's very important, especially we know doctors and nurses have a very hectic and stressful job. And I must say, I guess you don't speak for all doctors, but I must say that it's very commendable as a doctor that, you can still find that time to unwind and to be able to enjoy life away from being in your office. Now,
I think
you are a
I think
doctor
that I
and
have.
you're also the head of a household. We mentioned in your bio that you're the fiance of Miss Tanisha and you're the father of a beautiful princess, Tirza. How has your family reacted to you being one of the doctors fighting the virus on the front line? Because I know, like you said, if you let fear come in, that's when you make mistakes. But going home every day, knowing you have your 4-year-old there and you have your fiance there, do you feel any sort of fear in terms of saying, well, what if today is the day that I didn't follow protocols and I was exposed or anything like that, and I don't want to go home and get my family sick? Or is it that when you're in such a position that you would have to be away from your family, how do doctors and nurses deal with the situation of them coming home and them leaving work and then going home to their families?
In my case, it's a bit different. I live in San Pedro, but my family lives in Belize City. So my family out here is Joshua, who is also a doctor. So we take our precautions here. But the Ministry of Health, they provide housing for people who are in direct contact with these people. I know my friend Vanessa, for example, Dr. Maganya, when she was doing swabbing at the flu clinic, she was provided with another house, so she didn't have to go home to her family. I also remember that in the first lockdown that we had, I wasn't able to go home for at least 2 months or more because of the fear of infecting my family. So it was very difficult, very tasking, because normally I go home on every weekend and stay home for 3-4 days. But I wasn't able to do that due to the fact of this entire COVID lockdown. My mom said, "Don't go home." Everybody said, "Don't go home." So I stayed here in San Pedro. Luckily, I have my support system out here. This, for example, is my daughter's birthday. I will go, but I got swabbed yesterday because I need to make sure I'm not sick before I go home. So it can be difficult. It can be tasking on your personal life, on your family life. But I have to be able to put my family's health as a priority, even if that means not being able to see them or touch them for some time. So it can be tasking. And I know that it's probably more difficult for those people who are so close to home but have to go to a housing area instead of going home. But thankfully, like I said, the healthcare workers on a whole, we've gotten, I believe, sufficient training as to not become infected. I believe most of the people that are healthcare workers that have become infected, they got infected outside of the workplace. So that's also very important, that I think a lot of the cases that we're seeing are people that got infected from who they thought were close friends or family members, and not necessarily at work.
Okay, as you mentioned that about the healthcare workers being infected away from the workplace, have there been heightened surveillance in the workplace regarding nurses and doctors? Because I know we have a number of nurses and doctors who are infected. In terms of limiting your personal life, okay, let me explain it more in detail. So let's say at your workplace where you are stationed in San Pedro, if there are doctors or nurses who have been infected, have the administration say, well, we don't want this to go, to blow over into something bigger. So we're going to ask our doctors and our nurses to limit their, going out, socializing, and so forth. Has there been any, limitation in that sense, or it is expected that you guys practice that same safety protocol as if you were at the workplace?
Well, we advise people on what to do, but at the end of the day, everybody has their own autonomy. We can't force anybody to not, but we educate our staff. And like I say, with this COVID thing, you can't really know who has it. There are a lot of people that are asymptomatic. And so we just advise you to use caution, exercise caution with everyone.
Okay. So in the beginning, we spoke about you being one of the focal points for leading the response to COVID-19 for the Ministry of Health. Can you talk a little bit there of what are some of the duties and responsibilities, or what are some of the aspects in which this portfolio of leading this response has been for the Ministry of Health?
Okay, so there's a funny story to that. I actually like to do all trainings that pop up. And so there was this training on epidemiology, and I did it. And then the next thing you know, COVID came along, and I find myself in a place. I'm not responsible for the entire island of San Pedro. I'm responsible to oversee the safety protocols. I'm responsible to make sure the supplies are there. I'm responsible to know who gets on or who gets off the island. I'm responsible for contact tracing. Of course, I work with the team, but I'm the one that oversees that all of this is being done. So we were even able, like I said, to speak to our social partners, get their cooperation in helping us set up an independent clinic. And so it can be overwhelming at times. It's a lot of responsibility, but I think that we've been doing quite well, thanks to God. And I think that the fact that we had a time to prep with the first two cases was very instrumental in the way that we're managing the entire situation at this point. It's been a humbling experience, a learning experience, but it is a lot of work. I'm working as a doctor as well as overseeing so much, but I'm grateful that I have a support system. I think that's very important, and I have a very good team that works along with me. I have a very capable team and very willing, and so we've been working quite closely. And I believe that our response out here in San Pedro, where we were the first ones that had the first outbreak, I think it has been a very, very good response. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve in this capacity, even though it wasn't something I was looking for. I was just looking for to expand my knowledge, but God works in ways that we don't always understand.
He had better plans for you.
I'm just here trying to do my best.
Right. As you spoke a little bit there about, having to deal with you being a doctor and also heading this team, what was it like when you guys heard Hurricane Nana was coming? I could imagine that you guys had to, whenever there's a hurricane, they always tell you go to shelter. And I know you guys are on an island. What was some of the preparation protocols that needed to be in place, especially for the hospital and those who are COVID-19 positive not being able to go to a place for shelter, or were there separate? I know I heard on the radio they said that some shelters had rooms for COVID-19 and then you had others that is for non-COVID-19 persons. But in the island, I know it would have been, because the short time frame that we had in order to prep for the hurricane. What was it like determining who gets to come off the island for safety, or what was the process?
Well, when we heard about Nana, actually, I'm also a part of the UC, which is the Emergency Operation Control, where we have the heads of several departments. There's the NEMO coordinator, there's the head of police, etc. So we are a very cohesive body. I think we got that. Again, that was all a product of the first two cases, and we have learned to work together. So when we heard about Nana, we started prepping maybe 3 to 4 days before, setting up our protocols, securing the clinic, etc. we had actually designated, or we had identified 4 shelters on the island, and one of those, the Horizon School, the Adventist Primary School, was identified as the place we would shelter our positives. At that point, we had over 200 positives,
Wow.
and so we also had to revise our protocol as to when somebody is considered infectious. Studies have shown that after 14 days, your chances of being infectious are slim to none. So we were able to identify those people that had less than 14 days, give them calls and ask them if they need to shelter, and provide that shelter for them.
Okay. What advice would you give to our viewers that are looking at this program at home about the severity of this virus? Can you share with us, or can you share with them rather, how they can do their part to keep themselves protected and also their loved ones?
Yeah, so when it comes to this COVID thing, the frontliners are no longer the healthcare professionals. The frontliners is each and every individual. Everybody has to do their part to decrease the transmission of this disease.
Right.
I sounds like a scratch record, but the truth is these things help. Washing your hands if they're visibly soiled, meaning if you go see dirt on it, you need to wash it. Using a mask and using it properly, meaning it needs to cover your nose and cover your chin, not just using it over your mouth. In fact, some studies have shown that the virus tends to bind more inside your nose than anywhere else. So proper use of a mask, and a proper mask. I know not everybody can always have a medical mask. I know there are a lot of homemade masks going around, but whatever it is that you're using, try to use it properly. If you don't have to go out, stay at home. I think assuming that anybody at this point is positive, we have so many cases all over the country, and there are a lot of people that are asymptomatic. I know we're doing our contact tracing, but it's so much so you have to just assume that everybody is positive, and if you don't have to go out, stay at home. And if you do have to go out, keep your 6 foot distance from other people, since that's the distance that we see that there's an increased amount of transmission going on. So I think with keeping with those 3 main points, you can protect yourself. Of course, if you can get some fresh air, exercise, eat healthy, avoid toxic habits, drinking, smoking, drinking coffee, any other kind of drugs. Those would be the things that would help you to keep a strong immune system. Quite recently, I've started eating a lot of ginger. I know in Belize we normally use ginger as just tea, but you put it in your stewed chicken, you put it in your soup, and it gives a nice little flavor. No? So that's what I've been doing, and I believe that if everybody does their part, then we can decrease the transmission significantly in this country. I know that we in San Pedro, we're seeing that we have had an improvement since the lockdown in the amount of numbers that we've had. And for the most part, people are complying. If you are a person that is positive, we would recommend that you ask for help. If you, let's say you live alone and you have no family members, ask somebody to help you to go to the bank or get your groceries for you and leave it on the doorstep. That way you don't infect other people. I've always said that this COVID disease affects more the vulnerable. So while I might be young and healthy and nothing might happen to me, I have to think about my mom or my aunt or my friend, grandma. These are the people that we see becoming complicated for the most part. So everybody has to put their part to be able to decrease the transmission of this disease. And nobody's saying at home. I know a lot of people have an issue with that. If you're within your household and nobody's sick, then obviously you don't need to be wearing a mask. However, if there is a person in your house, then that's where you need to wear a mask, especially when interacting with them.
Okay. Since the lockdown, Dr. Canul, I know you guys were on lockdown for quite some time. Since it has been lifted, do you see, before lockdown, the way how people were reacting in terms of social interactions? And now that they were under the lockdown and it has been lifted, do you see a significant change in the way people are comporting themselves? Meaning that do you see the streets being full with people? Do you see business going on as, per normal? Or do you see that people are being very cautious with the way how they carry themselves?
I think it's important to know that COVID isn't going anywhere. We need to learn to live with COVID, and that's why we practice these safety measures. The first lockdown in San Pedro was wonderful in the sense that the streets were peeled, nobody was about. However, after the lockdown was lifted, we in Belize, and especially in San Pedro, I believe we thought we were in a safety bubble where there was no COVID in the country, and so everybody was out about partying and
Yeah.
socializing, and that is the reason why we had that large break the second time. After the second lockdown has been lifted, we are seeing an increased amount of people conducting business and going around. But for the most part, or all our establishments in San Pedro have strong safety protocols where you have to sanitize before going in. Only a limited amount of people are allowed inside the establishments. And so I believe for the most part, people are complying. I'm grateful for that, and I hope it stays that way. Because if not, that's more work for me.
Indeed, indeed. I remember hearing Dr. Manzanero saying, when we keep having cases going up, and then, when Breaking Belize News or the Ministry of Health on their Facebook page launch out these new cases, people keep saying, the government needs to do this, they need to have more testing done so that we can get the people who are asymptomatic, and, the list of comments goes on. But I remember hearing that they had mentioned the limitations in terms of human resources to get these tests done and, to get that reporting as accurate or as timely as possible. Let's talk San Pedro. How has it been for you guys? I know it's only an island, but in terms of having the resources needed to care for COVID-19 patients and all that surround them, and then having your regular day-to-day emergencies and pregnancies and medical checkup. Sorry, how have you guys managed to keep both afloat with the human resources that you have?
Well, we were fortunate that we got two Cubans from Medical Brigade. So at this point, we have 8 doctors, and while we're managing 2 clinics, we are stretched thin, but we are managing to stay afloat. I know on average, we do about 30 or more swabs per day, apart from the other patients that we're seeing at the clinic. So yes, we are stretched thin, but we are managing at the moment.
Okay, that sounds very good, and it's nice to know that people can feel that comfort. I especially know we have people who will be watching this interview, and they can be comforted to know that they can still go to their clinics or the health facilities in San Pedro and know that they will be attended to. Dr. Canul, I want to ask you something. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer me, but you've mentioned time and time that COVID is not going anywhere. We have to try to live as normal as possible in order to deal with this virus. We're talking about schools. Well, school was supposed to open. Unfortunately, they weren't able to open in light of the increase in cases. But even after, I would say, the cases go down and somehow we've been able to flatten the curve, do you think that these safety measures and protocols that are currently in place, do you see from now until, let's say, 2021, that these methods and protocols will keep in place, or the COVID-19 is going to be something like, the measles and, the others that we have vaccine for, slowly dying off? As a doctor, from your medical perspective, how do you see us from now until 2021 in getting over this entire virus, and, how do we move forward?
That's a hard question, Diana. But I believe in the safety measures, and I believe that because I practice them and I haven't become infected. But I will say that it is a very difficult question because, especially in the case of schools where children they might not understand the gravity of the situation, and what child doesn't want to go and play with their friends. So it is a very difficult situation. I believe that eventually, with a vaccine coming out, and that will help significantly. And a huge problem with COVID in the world is that when the health system becomes overwhelmed, that's when people start dying because then there's not enough either human or other resources to care for these people. So when do I see things going back to normalcy? I don't know. That's an honest answer. Will things eventually go back to normalcy? I believe so. Um, we've learned a lot from this pandemic, and even our resources, medical resources, etc., have increased. We've become more efficient in dealing with these illnesses. Our knowledge of what treatment works best has also increased as well. So all of those factors are helping for us to get back to some sort of normalcy in the near future. When exactly? I don't know.
Okay, as we're winding down here, Dr. Canul, before you go, I would like to ask you in terms, you have a daughter, right? And I remember my daughter telling me, Mom, I miss going outside. I miss playing with my friend. I miss, basically, she's missing all the social interaction, going to church, and all the activities that, kids love to do. Mental health, as you mentioned before, is very important. And when it comes to our children, trying to explain to them why is it that they cannot go out and do some of the stuff that they enjoy doing is very hard. As a father and as a doctor, can you share with us, if possible, what are some fun things that you have your daughter engaged with, to distract her from, daddy's a doctor and, daddy has to deal with all these sick people. But also, can you share with us as parents, what do you do with your daughter to keep her, engaged, not being bored, and just still to try to be a fun little girl during this tragic time?
So I believe we made a very wise decision in getting her a dog about a year ago, and so helped her significantly. While she doesn't have any siblings at this time, she still has somebody or something to play with. Um, Other than that, we have well, her mom is at home at this moment, so her mom is engaging her a lot with learning. So she's kind of doing homeschool at this moment. And we tried to get, well, she was involved as well in volleyball in the intermediate before we got locked down again. So I believe that getting them involved, getting them active, playing in the yard, etc., that's very important for children, getting some fresh air. And while they might not be able to interact with all their friends as they used to, uh, they have to have some form of normalcy, some type of routine. You get up in the morning, you read a story, um, you take a shower. Having a routine, having a pattern is very, very important. Making them get enough exercise, run about, stretch, all these things are very important. So while yes, they might not have the same childhood that we have had growing up, where you can have um, big chase around the schoolyard and all of these other things, you have to get them in a routine at home. And if they have siblings, wonderful. If not, a little pet or something that occupies your time can assist as well.
Okay. Is there any final words, Dr. Canol, that you would like to leave with our viewers this morning regarding our topic, fighting COVID-19 on the front line?
My final words would be that at this point, we're all frontliners. We all have our part to put in. Um, don't become overwhelmed by all the news. Yes, keep yourself informed, but don't become overwhelmed. Try to live your life as normal as possible while being cautious. Don't just focus on all the things. There's so much more to life than COVID. Life is still beautiful. Me, for example, after a long or stressful shift, Like you said, I go to the beach. That's one of the benefits of San Pedro, and I just look at the sunset. For me, that's therapeutic. So there are other things that you need to try to have some sort of normalcy. Try to have a support team. One of the things I have found that I like and that's helped me a lot is that we do a group chat with all my family members. So mom is in Corozal, dad is in Belize, um,
Nice.
all over, but we're still chatting. So having a support system, having people you can rely on, people you can speak to, helps a lot. I think this is where for the pastors can come in as well. If you're not feeling too well, if you're anxious, a pastor, elder, somebody can come and pray. Well, not come and pray with you, but we're living in an age of technology where you
Yes.
can call or they can call you and you can get that support. And try to keep us healthy, eat healthy, fresh air. All those things are very, very important. So as a frontliner, yes, it's a stressful job. Yes, we put ourselves at risk, but in the same way that we take our safety measures and we stay safe, thanks to that, these are things that all the other people, everybody else, because we're all frontliners, can do. Self care, take care of yourself, not just mentally, emotionally, but and physically, but as a whole. Remember, we're not just physical beings, but we have other aspects of our lives as well. So I would say that we all need to put our part and put some trust in God and don't worry about the rest. You do your part, trust God, and everything else will come into play.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Javier Canul, for being with us today. We are so happy that you have been able to be here with us today and share all those things that you did. When we see our doctors out there on the front line, like I mentioned before, we think, how do they cope? How do they go to work every day knowing the risks that they have? But we're happy that we were able to at least to see a little bit of what it's like and how you've been dealing with it, and seeing or hearing about that experience. We can also be comforting knowing that as long as we try, like you said, we do our part, we try our best to follow the protocols, and then we leave the rest to God. I believe that is the only way that we will be able to fight this virus. We want to thank you for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with us. To our viewers at home, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to another program, and we are going to invite you to tune in again for another edition of Defining Your Health.